When the sun sets, the undead awaken. To slake their hunger, they feed upon the herd of unaware mortals. Right beneath our noses, the kindred clash against their rivals as they vie for control of the city of San Francisco. Are you strong enough to cheat Final Death and see another night? Vampire the Masquerade Rivals expandable card game from Renegade Game Studios.
Good evening, family, and welcome to Vampire Wednesday. I am your host, Matt Holland, here with Dan Blanchette, game designer at Renegade Games. Dan, how are you doing?
Great, Matt. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you for joining us for this final Wolf and the Rat preview here. And speaking of the Wolf and the Rat, for those of you at home, if you missed the news this morning, Wolf and the Rat pre-orders are now open. So across the United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom, you can put in the order on the appropriate Renegade web store and get the General Tamasca and General Flint alt-art cards, as well as if you order during October, you'll get a copy of the Victor Temple promo card, which is the Victor Temple from LA by Night, B. Dave Walters' character. That card was designed on stream with B. Dave himself and help from our Twitch audience. So that card is now a real thing you can play with in the game. He's a Ventru as befits the Baron of the Valley. And that is now a great way to get it, in addition to other ways we'll announce in the future. But for now, I have one more little news item in that our Vampire Rivals deck builder is in closed beta with the Vampire playtesters at the moment. So they're going to put it through its paces. We'll give some feedback, make some changes, and then have that ready for you all very, very soon. I know that I am very much looking forward to a nice, easy to use deck builder to, kind of theory craft and filter the cards as I learn the card pool, and especially with all these new cards in Blood and Alchemy and the Wolf and the Rat. And I suspect that'll be a helpful thing for all of you as well.
Indeed.
But Dan, we have the Crypt Pack. We've talked about Gangrel, we've talked about Nosferatu, but the Crypt Pack has a bunch more cards in there for deck building, for adjusting things, changing up your tactics. So let's talk about Hoard the Herd, which is the kind of alternate Nosferatu agenda that's presented in the Crypt Pack, right?
It is the alternate one. The other one was Invisible Army, where you're trying to basically attach vagrants or defeat your foes who have attached vagrants. This one, you want to basically just clear the streets of all mortals. At the end of your turn, if there are no unattached citizens or vagrants in the streets, you get one agenda. If you can also get rid of the SAD, you'll get two agenda. So no mortals out there. So this will, I think, will be fun initially when you're actually doing the hoarding. Because you can gain agenda while you're doing it, as well as triggering this agenda. Once you have done it at the end of your turn.
Because the citizens, you'll get the agenda for taking them, and then once the streets are clear, you'll also score that. So yeah, you can get some pretty aggressive. I mean, up to 4 agenda a turn.
Yep.
From taking mortals and
it'll be tricky for your foes to deal with it because they usually also want to take, these citizens and attach them and defeat SAD for the agenda, but they'll just be helping you. So how they manage that, especially if they're playing something like Playthings and that encourages them to do so. You might actually have some unexpected help out there, even if they're doing it grudgingly.
Do you think that this agenda has a place with the Toreador decks as well instead of Playthings? Because Playthings, you get the additional agenda when you attach, but that one kind of tops out. Once all the citizens have been drawn, you're not going to make anything else. This one is more, scales better in a way.
It could. I mean, this will definitely keep on giving you that benefit as long as the streets remain clear. All it takes is one of them to come out, and you're unable to deal with it, and then it kind of shuts you down. So it's a little, you're a little at the mercy of the city deck and what your other players are doing. Whereas with Playthings, you can be a little more proactive in terms of, trying to get what you want to get. But I definitely think it can work for a lot of different strategies and clans, including the Toreador.
Nice. Well, then on to the Gangrel alternate, Animal Kingdom. This is a little bit more a caring and animal lovers agenda.
Call of the Wild.
Call the Wild.
Yes. Yeah. Call of the Wild, you want to attach animals. This one, you want to attach them, but hold on to them. If you control at least one at the start of your turn, you'll get one agenda. If you have 3 or more, you'll get 2 agenda. So
the 3 or more have to be different. So you can't be doubling up on mongrels or stray cats, things like that.
Very good point.
Yep, I love the art on this. The good doggo and his little animal friends there with Gangrel Vampire. And then speaking of Gangrel, yeah, this is their alternate haven, the outskirts. So kind of on the fringes of society here, but again, dealing with animals.
Yep, they're kind of protecting the protecting the roads that lead into town. They're like hanging out on the outskirts. This one has a leader ability that once during each of your turns, you may discard an animal and mend 2 blood on any character in your coterie or torpor. So it basically turns your animal cards into these powerful mending tools that you can use outside of your end phase.
Sure. I like the flexibility of coterie or in torpor, and I like the fact that unlike burning an animal for its usual effect, discarding it lets you get them pulled back through various means.
Yeah, potentially.
We'll cover here in just a second. And then Nosferatu also have an alternate haven. So this one gives your usual regular secrecy when you're in your haven, but also characters in your coterie with 1 or more vagrants attached have +1 secrecy in the streets.
Right. So the Nos are basically blending in with the local homeless and other vagrant populations, which gives them a little more protection. So they're a little harder to deal with. It gives them basically that haven protection, anywhere else they're going.
I like the thematic, just how thematic that is with the, oh yeah, I've got some of these vagrants with me and I have my hood up and I can just kind of walk by. Nobody will pay attention to us because, who looks at these disfortunate members of society anyways.
Right. And having those attached vagrants also give you the ability to avoid damage. So it kind of gives you like double protection in that sense.
Nice. Well, the second member of the Swiftfoot clan here is Leah. We talked about Lori in our Gangrel preview, and Lori is your kind of standard blocker character. She's got the block ability, or the guard ability. But Leah is more of an attacker, and I think has kind of a cool ability. You want to talk about what sets her apart there?
Sure. Leah Swiftfoot likes to go it alone. If you send her out into the streets as a party of 1, basically, then when she attacks, the target cannot use a blocker. So you will be able to, go forward with your attack against your original target. They can play a reaction, they just can't block. And then as soon as that attack resolves, you can pull her back to your haven. So she's like a quick strike tool. She goes out, bam, comes back.
Nice. And that seems particularly useful because I know there are attacks that have non-traditional effects that are not just straight damage from the attack, like either removing blood or, stealing prestige, putting a token, like a fear token or some kind of status on a character. And this lets you get that exactly where you want it. The other Gangrel option is Harry O'Brien, who is another kind of powerful mending tool for the Gangrels.
Yes, it is. Without having to spend an action, you can just exhaust Harry and mend characters in this party who have animals attached. And the more animals they've attached, the more blood they get to mend.
Awesome. That one goes pretty well with your Animal Kingdom agenda.
Absolutely.
You want to stack them up on there and you want to then keep them there. This lets you get that mending though, in addition. But Nosferatu also have some fun interactions with animals, starting with the crazy cat lady.
Yep. Like Harry, you can just exhaust her without spending an action. And if you happen to have alley cats in your hand or in your discard pile, you could attach them without having to spend the blood in the first place. Whereas usually you're paying blood to attach these animals, which is why Harry is so good. He basically gives it back to you. With Crazy Cat Lady, you don't even have to spend the blood in the first place. She just draws the cats in naturally.
And I can use those for some other effect, discarding them to pay some cost or something, and then still pull them back and use them for their other effects. I like it. And I love the art there with all the cats and just the kind of like a little bit unsettling, look to the whole thing because, vampires.
Right.
And Bobby Hansen, who you can't see just how handsome he is because of that unfortunate mask, but he is a pretty solid blocker here with guard and 2 physical stat.
Yep, he's a good guy to have in your party to protect the people you want to protect.
And you pointed this out. We were talking earlier. He's got obfuscation or obfuscate, so that synergizes with some pretty good defensive cards. Correct?
Yes, it does.
Awesome. And we have just 2 cards in the library sort of stack that are not in the crypt pack that don't show up in either of these other pre-con decks. There's a lot of 1-ofs and 2-ofs in those decks, so a lot of the crypt pack is just filling those play sets out. But Spy Games is, you mentioned before, your favorite card in the whole set.
Yeah, just in terms of the possibilities of it, it kind of feels different than the other cards. It changes the strategic landscape for a turn. Basically, what it does is you can steal a rival token from a target foe, and then you have to return it at the beginning of your next turn. But for that full round, you basically are calling two people rival, or you're taking back your own rival token and preventing someone from calling you rival. So that can have many different benefits. For example, if someone is weak, like if there's a player who's particularly vulnerable right now, and you don't want another player to take them out for the win, you can steal their rival token and you can take them out yourself for the win. Or you could just protect them by holding onto the rival token. They're not going to be as desirable. No one's going to want to take them out because you're going to get those 3 agenda points.
Yeah.
Or you can just take back your own rival token from someone, and that'll maybe prevent them from going after you. It'll be a lot easier for them maybe to go after, a citizen or something instead of taking you on if they're not going to get the benefit.
I can't wait to see just the reactions at a table when this card gets played, at a high level tournament, and somebody just wait and like, let me see that card again. Like, does that actually say what I think it says? Now, could multiple people play Spy Games in succession and say, I steal your token, Dan, and then Matt Hyra steals it from me? that's a interaction that's possible, correct?
It could definitely happen. I mean, all those players would have to have at least one NOS in their coterie, but that's also possible. So we'd actually have a FAQ for this card where at the beginning of your next turn, you actually return that rival token back to the person who originally had it. It's back to its owner. So that way you don't have this weird system where the rival token never gets back to who belonged to in the first place.
That is probably a good idea, just to keep weirdness like that from happening. Definite edge case, because like you said, you have to have multiple people playing Nosferatu.
Yeah,
and this card in hand, and a reason to do it,
and it's a 5 BP action card, so too you can't exhaust just anyone. It's going to be probably your leader or some other.
Has to be a fairly heavy hitter,
right?
And the other card here, the Shakedown. So it allows you to look at a target foe's hand, name an attack type. So that's mental, physical, social, or ranged, correct?
That's correct.
And then the target will discard all attack cards of that type. And if the acting character has the sheriff title, you gain a prestige for each card discarded this way.
Yeah, that can be a really, really effective action to take, particularly if you're playing Shep Mason. He was a favorite character among playtesters early on when we were first playtesting this. And they even helped kind of design him. They want to make sure he had a big belt buckle, for example. So we were featuring him in this art because he is probably one of the best people to use this. He can get the sheriff title for free, or you can attach it for free if you happen to have it. So using him to use the Shakedown would be, a double whammy for people.
And Shep is a Nosferatu in this pack, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
in the precons. Yeah.
Yep. So really cool, and just anybody can take this card. It's not Nosferatu only. And if you have a very aggressive deck coming after you that's just throwing multiple physical or social attacks in there, that's a pretty good way to take some heat off yourself.
Oh yeah, you can just completely disarm someone if they load up too much on one type of attack card.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, that is all of the new cards in the Crypt Pack, but that's still, even in just a couple of cards, gives some pretty fun possibilities to both change up those precon decks, but also, like this one, slot into other decks as well. But we are not done talking about cards quite yet. We do have a little adjustment to one of the city deck cards, San Francisco Fog, that we want to, it's going to be going live in the clarification document by the time you've seen this. We do just want to go through kind of the implications and what the change is, though. So,
sure.
What's the change?
Yep. So the original text here says ongoing range cards cannot be played. This had an unintended effect where if someone announced a physical attack against a foe, even if they had a card that had a physical reaction, if it also had a ranged reaction, they couldn't play it because of this fog. And that wasn't really the intent of it. It was just to basically prevent ranged attacks and ranged reactions specifically. So now we changed the card to say ranged attacks cannot be announced. That way you just kind of avoid the whole situation altogether.
So for most people, this isn't actually changing the way you're probably playing with a card, but it does get rid of a weird edge case that, could cause a pretty negative moment at a tournament for someone. So nice and smooth. You just can't initiate those arranged attacks, but you can still play the reaction to a attack that is not ranged.
Correct.
And the last thing that we want to show off tonight, this is speaking of something we've talked about earlier with Victor Temple, the LA by Night character. Earlier this year, we designed, with the help of Erika Ishii and our Twitch audience, a card for Annabelle, Erika's Bruja vampire character in LA by Night. So Annabelle is very close with Victor Temple. Annabelle has some very strong principles and beliefs, one of which is that they are very hesitant to take a life. So respecting that, we came up with the ability that attackers in this party deal plus X superficial damage to characters with a no influence token, where X is the influence you exert. Dan, what is superficial damage and how does that relate to that sort of character concept?
When you're dealing superficial damage to a target, you cannot reduce their blood below 1. So you basically can't defeat them. They're not going to go down to 0. You can follow up with another attack, with like Murder Crows and peck off that last blood to take them out. But Annabelle by herself with this attack, with an attack, cannot do that.
Yep. And what we did after some playtesting and tweaking, we've changed that to the party ability. Characters in this party deal plus some superficial damage to the opposing character during an attack for each influence you exert during the attack. So it's very similar. It does remove that need for them to have a no influence token, which makes it a little bit more universal. And as I understand it, this now will work on the defense as well.
That's correct. You can play it, if you're using her for a reaction, if she's dealing damage back, she can add +1 superficial to that as well. And on top of that, it could be modified by things like influence modifier cards, which some of those can add quite a bit of influence, which could be quite a bit of damage. You're not going to ever knock them down to 0, but you can definitely hurt them.
Yeah, and we've got things like Murder of Crows or just another attack that can hit that now very, very vulnerable character. And that's just a scary thing if you're attacking with your leader, 6 blood, you're thinking, oh, I'm fine. And Annabelle can do some serious damage.
Oh, yeah. And her being Bruja, I think, you can follow this up with coup de grace, because that person will probably more than likely be wounded. So finish them off with that as well.
So Annabelle, we will announce exactly how she'll be available in the coming couple of months here, but we've just finished playtesting this. Hasn't even been printed. We just wanted to show it off because a lot of you joined in the process of creating this card. And a lot of you really enjoy the character Annabelle and have been watching them in LA by Night for a while. So cool little thing for a Month of Darkness to see that character now in the game. And again, we'll show you exactly how to get her later on. But Dan, thanks so much for joining us to chat about Wolf and the Rat here over these last couple of weeks.
My pleasure.
I think it was probably pretty fun for you to design and put your stamp on the game.
It was. I had a lot of fun. And I have a great group of playtesters to guide me as well. And Matt, obviously, very much involved. Even if he wasn't leading it, he was there every step of the way.
Awesome. Well, our Wolf and the Rat coverage is not quite over, despite the fact that, like I said, it is available to pre-order today. Next week, we're going to have a live play. We had 3 players out in the studio playing Tremere, I think, Gangrel, and Nosferatu, playing an actual live game, showing off these cards in action. So look forward to that and get out there and put your pre-orders in to get the pre-order promos and your copy of Victor Temple. But until next week, everyone, thanks for tuning in. And Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.